Hello folks, we are going to be working on Chapter 12 now, and Chapter 12, as I have the unit titled, says Drawing with HTML5. Okay, well that's kind of an odd thing to be putting on an HTML page, right? But we've had this advance, and it's really maybe one of the most important advances in HTML5, and it's the one that's probably been least explored and utilized, and I'm going to add the word yet to the mix. We had this technology in the past called Flash. And Flash, you guys, not the TV show or the movie, but you know, a lot of people are familiar with this. For example, every once in a while they get updates or they go to a website and it requires the Flash player. And in the old days, we used Flash to really kind of do a lot of things, basically things that we could not do within a browser without some sort of a plugin. So Flash was a plugin that we would add to our browser that created a container that allowed us to do basically anything we want. And that is the same thing that we could do in any traditional operating system native application. So we could have interactivity, we could have video effects, animation, buttons, applications, video players, multimedia of like any sort. And not only was it kind of a combination of plugin, but it was also an authoring platform. So there's a whole tool that goes with it, Adobe Flash, which is now called Animate. And then there was an additional factor that you could like output to certain formats, and those formats then would require that player in order to operate. But you could create very rich interactive experiences in a web browser using Flash. Problem: a lot of people are paranoid about Flash, and rightly so, because it was actually a big security hole for many years. And a lot of people are very, not open to installing plugins that might cause problems, right? So a lot of people would just refuse to install Flash in their browser. So if you had a website that was driven exclusively by Flash, you had a problem. You couldn't basically run this rich multimedia content, like really a rich interactive environment. So what they came up with for HTML5 was a container called Canvas. And what Canvas does is basically allow for that type of capability within a web page, and it's built right into the browser and built right into HTML5. No plugins are necessary. So Canvas is a tool. And I'm at the W3 School site right now, and I'm just bringing up their information. And it says, what is it? It's an element used to draw graphics on the fly via scripting, usually JavaScript. Interesting thing is, Adobe Flash, which changed its name to Animate, now when you create anything inside of that environment, the default output mechanism is now HTML5 Canvas. And the beauty of that is that tool is so powerful that at least it's not going away. So people who were developing for Flash are now developing for Canvas. So you can still create content for it using a high-level tool if you want. What we are going to learn here, though, is a real base-level application of this where we hand code it. So yes, you can hand code everything, but keep in the back of your head that there are high-level tools that allow you to author directly to this format without knowing how to code necessarily. All right. And if you read through here, it says what can it do? It can draw text, it can draw graphics, you can animate, you can make things interactive, you can make games. Right? That usually is what the one that goes, hey, I can make games, that sounds good to me, right? So it kind of like draws a lot of people in. There's actually a canvas element that you can drop in, and then you can, of course, style it and do a bunch of different things. If you step through some of the examples here, and you're going to see this stuff mimicked in our book, is you basically start scripting stuff in with JavaScript, and there's a series of steps. And what you should do, if you're really curious, folks, is don't just read the book and do this exercise, but go off and explore. There's entire books written that are like 6 inches thick on just Canvas, if you want to learn how to hand code it. For my money, if you really want to author for this environment, you get a tool like Adobe Animate, and then use that rich tool set to create the content. And then it just outputs it for you. All right. Anyhow, there's lots of information out there. So that's really kind of the point here. W3 Schools is a good starting point, but there are other resources that can take you a little bit deeper. We are now on page 502 in our book in chapter 12, and we're going to work on the exercise there. And once again, we're going to start by creating a new empty application. Now, I still have the previous chapter 11 stuff open, and I'm closing that. And then I'm going to go ahead and create another new project that's once again an empty web application here. They do want us to call it Canvas Snap Shooter. All right, so go ahead and create that, let it build out. All right, we are going to need to create a media folder. So this is kind of a repeat of the previous chapter. So let's go ahead and add a new folder. Let's call it media. Once it is created, we are then going to need to go to our resources folder from the sample code that comes with the book. Once again, you can get to that by going to our course shell, going to the resources page, finding the practice files, which I have all shared, and they should still all be out there. And then you can either download it directly, or you can follow the shared files here, and hopefully I have whatever it is that I'm asking you to grab here. And if I don't, and I'm looking right now, I don't have the ice bolt video, do I? So then you are going to need to download and unzip that. I already have that done on my machine. If you haven't done that yet, why don't you take a moment to download those files and extract them. Once you're done extracting those files, let's go ahead and right-click that media folder and add an existing item. I'm going to go to the location where my sample files are located, and I put them in my Web2 folder right here under practice exercises. And this is chapter 12, and then I'm going to the resources folder. And I'm not seeing it in there. Oh, you know why? You got to switch that to that all files, right? So you got to switch this down here to star.star, all files, so that you can see the video. So I'm going to add the ice boat video to the media folder. Once you've completed that step, then we're going to move on and create a few pages. Kind of the same thing we did in the last chapter. We need an HTML page, some CSS, scripts folder, and then a JavaScript file, and jQuery. So those are steps 4 through 8 on page 502. So I'm going to kind of tackle them one at a time. On the root of the project, I'm going to add an HTML page. This is called Canvas page. And there it is in the root. I'm also going to right-click and add a style sheet. This is going to be called default.css. From there, I'm going to add a folder. This folder is the scripts folder. Inside that scripts folder, we're going to add a JavaScript file and call it default.js. And one thing I do want to mention here is, like, why do we go to the trouble of just putting the CSS in the root, right? But we're creating a scripts folder for a JavaScript file. And the reason for that is, with the next step, when we add the jQuery, it wants to put it there, so we may as well just do it anyhow. All right, so with that in mind, I'm going to go up to the root of the project again, open up the package manager. We're going to find jQuery like we always do, and install. Drops right everything into that folder. Now we're moving on to page 503. And in that first step, which is step number 9, they want us to actually go back to our Canvas page, and now they want us to put in links to everything. So we want to bring the CSS file in. Then let's bring over our jQuery. And then let's bring over our default.js. Go ahead and drop your title in. This is step number 10. Go to Canvas Snap Shooter. And it says in the body element, add a video tag whose ID is my video. Now if you're crafty like I am, and I hope you are, for step number 11, you'll read step number 11, you'll read step number 12, and then you'll go to step 13 and just copy the code in, right? Now if you really want to punish yourself and type it in manually, please feel free. I'm not opposed to that. There's a certain value to that too. And then I'm just going to very carefully kind of condense my code down here a little bit. I am kind of like super zoomed in, so it's easy to read, almost to an obnoxious level. But you can see that we have this link. Now notice we're going to run into the same problem that you guys may have run into in the previous chapter, and I'm sorry I didn't record it into the video, but those of you that probably watched that video, I'm hoping you're watching this one. And that is, the book asks us to name the media folder with a capital N, and then they give us a folder location with a lowercase m. And it works just fine on your local machine, and you move it up to Apollo or a real web server, and all of a sudden the videos stop working. So make sure those cases are correct. So if your Eagle videos weren't working, this is why. Make sure that either you correct your code or correct the folder names to match the code, one or the other. But the case is important. Maybe not on a Windows or a Mac machine, but it's certainly important on a Linux web server and a Windows web server for that matter as well. All right, so that is step number 13 complete. We're now on page 504. And why don't you go ahead and save this HTML file, and then let's switch over to the CSS file, and we're going to start to add some style elements. First, we're going to add a style for the canvas. Okay, just putting a border around it. And then we're going to jump over to our default.js file. And we are going to add the document ready function here. I am creating a line at the top. We're also going to add another function here. This is step number 16 now, where we're going to draw the video frame. You can see up on line 3 here that we're calling this so that whenever we're clicking on that button, we're initiating this element. And what this does via JavaScript is it actually stores the elements by ID into variables, and then we're actually creating the frame that we're using to pump everything into. Notice that there's on line 9 it says get context 2D. Now that should trigger something in your brain, because usually when you learn how to do graphics via computers, first you learn with two-dimensional drawing, meaning just height or like, you know, across and down, right? But then there's also the capability of drawing stuff in the third dimension that you can't represent on the screen. However, once you've created it, you should be able to rotate it and do 3D things as well. So Canvas actually has that capability as well. Now, to kind of maybe get you excited about this, we're going to do a couple more steps, and then I'm going to show you something that's kind of interesting. So we're going to go ahead and finish this really very primitive little exercise, because really all we're doing in this exercise, folks, if you haven't figured it out yet, is we're taking a video, and instead of using the media elements to play it, the video tag, we're pushing it into the Canvas environment to play it, which is kind of a unique approach. All right, so let's go ahead and make that happen. We're going to right-click the Canvas HTML and make that the start page. I think I clicked on it. Okay. And then let's go ahead and launch it and see if it actually loads up. With any luck, you get it to load up. And then here's the fun part of this. You hit that play button, and as this is playing, you can take a snapshot of any frame. That's kind of cool, actually. Now, you could probably, for those of you that are maybe thinking about this a little bit, because I've been playing with my Raspberry Pi as of late, turning it into a web server, and I'm like, if I could get a stream of video coming in, I could automate this process. You could see, like, you could do all sorts of weird stuff. And this is a really primitive example. In the actual lecture part of the book, they have some examples of drawing things, but this really, for me, is like not a great example of Canvas. So what I'd like to do next, folks, is I actually want to show you some really amazing examples of what people have done with Canvas. And if you have never explored this type of stuff, I strongly encourage that you do. So what I did is I just went to Google, like I've done many times before, and of course you type HTML5 Canvas examples, and W3 School comes up, right? So you can go there and try that, right? We kind of already looked at that. But of course, here's what it says: 21 ridiculously impressive HTML5 Canvas examples. That's the one for me, right? Let's see what you can do with this technology. And I'm going to tell you what, I know that this web page is actually pretty old. In fact, look at the date on this. This goes back almost 8 years, right? So Canvas and HTML5, when it was in draft form, this is when this stuff was created. You can only imagine what has been done since. But basically what people did is they took all the techniques that they were using in an environment like Flash. So people that know how to do computer graphics and animation, interactive applications, there's a certain type of programming that goes with that, and the code that runs it all, and translated it to JavaScript and the Canvas environment. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to kind of click through on these, and I don't know if... Oh. Sound off. You guys see what I mean about sound just popping on, right? But, okay, wow. And I'm not really sure. Oh, you can switch it to half speed or make it go 4 times as fast. And it shows the color palette. So, okay, wow, that was cool. Let's try this one. So I'm kind of like crossing my fingers and hope these things load up from 8 years ago, because that's how the web is. I guess it's just doing its thing now, right? And it's got little check boxes here where we can switch it. I'm not really sure what it's doing, but there it is. This one, this is an old one. This is something that I've seen people do in a lot of different languages. So watch my mouse. Now somebody has figured out the math that goes with that, because really what it's simulating is motion and gravity. And these are known formulas. And if you know the formulas, you can type them in there and then manipulate portions of the formula with mouse movements in JavaScript. It's really pretty amazing. And I'm sure that if you looked at the code, you'd go, oh my God, and it's probably like 10,000 lines of code. But I'm just showing you things like this are possible. Well, this looks interesting because it's got a little palette at the bottom, right? It's following my mouse. Okay, so different. fascinating, right? Now, if you guys want to take it even further and maybe like HTML5 games, and notice, you guys see how it says source code there? Now, I'm not trying to sell any of these games because, frankly, these are not the kind of games I play on computer. That's just me. But you guys may have played some of these, and these are all created using HTML5 Canvas. You find a lot of these, and you can find the source code for them. So if you want to like download something and play with it, you can. You know, we have one of your classmates is doing exactly that for their final project, is they found a Canvas game and they're tweaking it, trying to make it work. Now, when people provide code for free, sometimes they don't always provide the most current working version. So sometimes you'd like download these games and they're mostly built but not completely built. So there's actually a lot to be learned by looking at these, because the code behind it, you got to remember, is all JavaScript. All of it runs in your browser. So feel free to go out there and explore. So people are doing some pretty advanced things with this technology. And I think it really kind of unlocks a lot of capabilities, folks, that for some developers, this can be like a whole career path, is just walking this Canvas thing. So even though the exercise in the chapter was really simple, I would encourage you real strongly that if you want to add something really cool to your project, that you might want to explore this a little bit and just take a look at some of the capabilities that are out there. Right, this video ends here. You guys, I think, have enough knowledge now to go out and be dangerous-ish, and good luck with it.